Ladies, gentlemen, and destined ones of all ages, Black Myth Wukong has quite a significant variance in the challenge of bosses, from most Yao Guai chiefs being relatively simple encounters, all the way to the toughest of the optional kings that you can find in secret areas of the game. And while you can definitely get through the game entirely just by putting together whatever seems cool and then just being skilled, sometimes you just want a setup that absolutely just crushes things into the dirt. My first build that I properly messed around with and maximized within this game was focused heavily around Cloud Strike and making the most of it for big singular hits in the mid game, because that's where I was when I did it. But now that I've finished chapter 4, I found a whole other set of synergies that happen to overlap with this concept to create an absolutely incredible damage machine of a comfortable general use build with some pretty stark differences. This isn't made to feel uncomfortable, it's not built around just having one big hit. The point isn't to maximize the damage at the cost of your survivability, because I of course am actually playing this build, so I want it to feel good even outside of the moments of massive bursts, even when your cooldowns are down. The whole point of this then is working around a Cloud Step and the beauty of unveiling Strike as a massive damage boost when you use an attack to come out of stealth, but this time working together with Pillar Stance for your staff, which gives you a super extended heavy attack with long range that you charge by sitting on the staff itself. We combine this with two other major things: Ring of Fire as a spell with the Relic for chapter 3, and the option with that lets you charge heavies to 4 focus points while you are standing in Ring of Fire, and then the golden long weapon that you can craft in chapter 4 with the special effect of boosting Pillar Stance generally, as well as adding a Thunder Dragon attack and effect whenever you do a Pillar Stance heavy with 3 or more focus points. So the whole loop of this is Ring of Fire, Cloud Step, Pillar Stance charge inside of the circle, ideally putting the decoy somewhere outside where you won't get knocked around, and then drink from your gourd while at 3 focus points or above, and then you can actually do your charging Pillar Stance heavy thanks to the skill tree upgrades as you're unveiling Strike, and that will let you launch the heavy attack with massive damage. This has massive crit chance as well because of Cloud Strike upgrades, massive crit damage because of the general setup that we put around it, and just of course a really solid amount of attack in general. And quite possibly the best part is the cooldown on these two spells almost perfectly line up with each other, with Ring of Fire being just a touch longer to come back, and of course the added bonus that we apply shock debuff to enemies, which in itself makes them take more damage from everything that they get hit by afterwards. As well, we of course build around neutral combat too, so you aren't just a wet noodle if you run out of spells, and basically the idea is to just use perfect dodges and weapon attacks to just build up focus points normally, then unleash 3 or 4 point heavies for the bonus weapon effect for a ton of damage outside of your cooldowns. All that said, let's just dive into how to actually put this setup together, the whole build, all the pieces and where they come from. We'll talk about the equipment, the spirit, the vessel, the armor, the curios, your gourd, drink and soak, as well as the skill tree and relic setup as well. Starting with the weapon then itself, we have the Golden Long Staff. This is the final staff upgrade for defeating the 4th of the Long bosses, which are the actual hidden things behind the Long Scales key item. This requires you to have killed the other 3 of these bosses first. The 4th Long though, Yellow Long, is in chapter 4, right beside the Relief of the Fallen Long Shrine. You can use the rest of the setup without this weapon, specifically using the weapon that is just one step up, the regular Long Wreath Staff. You just lose out on the Thunder effect and a good chunk of attack, which is of course a good portion of what makes our damage honestly so good, but that version of the staff is usable within this until you get to this chapter 4 boss. Then we have your vessel, and for this one, the Weaver's Needle, specifically for the passive effect of 2% bonus crit chance and 6% bonus crit damage. This comes from the final boss of the chapter 4 secret area, which comes from finding and killing the Venom Taoist optional boss twice within this chapter. Most of my footage actually doesn't have this item equipped, as I only unlocked it after getting my background kills, but it is definitely the one that you want to use with the setup once you have it, at least at the stage that I'm at within the game myself. Then after that we have your spirit, and you of course want the Rat Governor Spirit. The active effect actually fires out a Thunderbolt that applies shock buildup, and if you upgrade it, it will fire out 3 bolts that apply shock pretty near instantly on most enemies too, which is fantastic. The passive effect as well just boosts thunder damage as a whole too, which is of course a good portion of our biggest hits. This one is from the blue glowing Rat Governor enemy right ahead of the Rock Clash platform mandatory shrine in chapter 2. Then we have your armor, and this is mostly based around a 3-piece set: chest, gloves, and legs. The set as a whole reduces shock state duration on you as a player, but also increases your thunder damage. My set is upgraded to legendary rarity, but at mythical rarity you gain an enhanced bonus to thunder damage, so this can get better further in the game in at least one way right here. The chest piece also has a unique effect that makes Vengeful Mirage inflict Thunderbane. This refers to the sort of passive in the stamina tree that leaves after images behind you after you do a perfect dodge and then then explode. So it's definitely not bad to affect this, especially for boosting the damage too. This comes from defeating the main progress boss in Chapter 3, Kaijin Star on Turtle Island. The helmet then slot is actually open because it's just a 3-piece set, and the most synergistic option is the Snout Mask Helmet, which boosts your attack if you have recently used your gourd, and reduces attack if you go a long time without using it. We activate damage boosts by drinking from our gourd, so your big bursts of damage will just always have this effect active on them anyways as a result. Though I will say I would use this only for boss fights. For general level clearing, it obviously can hurt you, so I would just use anything else for the defense more than anything. This comes from the Boar NPC questline though in Chapter 2, after you give him a Sobering Stone, which you find elsewhere in the level. Then you also meet him in the Crouching Tiger Temple, and then you approach him back in his original spot with the Arhat gold piece in your inventory from killing the first Rat Prince in the Valley of Despair. Then we have our curios, and the big main one is the Auspicious Lantern curio, which is actually fully missable and quite hidden. This puts you in the Chance Beguiled effect when activating Cloud Step, which lowers your maximum health but also significantly increases your attack power. This is a part of our main synergy, but it isn't the end of the world if you can't get it on your first playthrough. It just lowers your attack a bit. As for how to get it, this comes from the Pagoda realm in Chapter 3. Specifically, you have to kill the Lantern Guai enemies all the way from the first spawn up to the top of the wheel. These only show up during the screen color changing effect when everyone gets red eyes. This lasts for 90 seconds when it happens, then goes away for 3 minutes, and then repeats this cycle. There are 8 of these lantern enemies that are very unmissable along the main path upwards if you're at least actively looking for them. The 9th one though, the final one, is actually somewhat hidden. From the Mani Wheel Shrine, do not head into the bell. This will start the boss, and once you kill the boss, you cannot get this curio anymore. This is the hard sort of lock off for this. Instead, you want to head back along the platform all the way down to the end of the rocky area. A bird enemy will flop down, but you can just sort of jump off the back ledge here onto a lower platform. When the screen changing effect happens here, you will find the 9th and final Lantern Guai down here, and if you have killed the other 8, then he will drop you this curio on death. Your other 2 curio slots are a little bit more up for debate. They're a bit more personal choice. The Tridacna Pendant curio reduces cooldown of all spells, which is of course great. The Tiger Tally curio boosts your attack in general after successive light attacks, which doesn't necessarily affect our main burst attack, but it does affect the things that you do in between the cooldowns. And there's also the Cat Eye beads, which slightly increase your crit chances another 3%, and that is of course helpful as we already have really high crit damage, and this doesn't hurt. There are also general attack boosting curios that you can get a bit further into the game than where I am personally that I'm aware of, which are obviously useful for, well, boosting your attack if that's what you want to do with these. Then the final piece of equipment itself is your gourd and what is in it. The best gourd itself for this is the Plaguebane gourd, though whether you actually want to use this is a personal decision, as this is a pretty big risk reward. This halves the healing that you get from using your gourd, but it gives you an attack boost whenever you drink from it. Again, we drink right before our big attacks always, so this just funnels into our burst combo anyways. Instead, if you don't want this, you could use something like the Immortal Gourd, which restores your mana as well as healing if you want something more comfortable. But I find the Plaguebane Gourd is generally enough healing when you hit as hard as this build does. This gourd comes from the Mad Tiger optional boss in Chapter 2, who is found by doing the mini quest with the old Rattle Drum key item that I've talked about in a fair few videos recently. As for the drinks and soak, the drink is whichever you prefer. I really like the Jade Essence drink because it restores some of your mana as well as healing when you use it, and this build uses a fair amount of spells, so it is quite comfortable. And then while multiple soaks can affect this setup, including ones past where I am in the game progress, the main one that really pulls it together is Breath of Fire, which boosts the attack of your next Unveiling Strike after drinking from this gourd. The wording on this is really important too, because the way it says it means that you can drink from this while sitting on your Pillar Stand staff already in Cloud Step. It buffs the attack you do when you come out of Cloud Step. It doesn't need to be applied before you enter the spell, so again, it's just a really good combo for the way that we actually do our burst. This one comes from the Cyan Loong optional boss in Chapter 3, who's just sitting around on Turtle Island. Then with that covered, we got your skills and relics as well. First, your relics to get those out of the way. For Craving Eyes, you want Keen Insight for increased critical hit damage. The cooldown reduction option for Cloud Strike is neat, but it puts it pretty off time with our Ring of Fire cooldown, and the combination of the two to let us do 4 focus point Unveiling Strikes is just way too strong, especially with this enhanced crit damage on it with our crit chance in general, as during Cloud Step we go up to right around 50% crit chance with Unveiling Strike, but still a bit above 10% passively out of Cloud Step 2, so this is always useful. For Fuming Ears, the second relic, then you want Whistling Wind. This temporarily increases your attack after you do a perfect dodge, and honestly the reason that we have this is just because there's not really a better option here. None of them affect our main burst, but this is pretty good in between cooldowns. Then you want Hubris Nose over here, and with this one, this is our most important one by a very large amount, because in one breath, this option here makes it so that you can charge your focus point up to 4 with within Ring of Fire while doing a heavy attack. This is what enables our main combo, because without this we would only be able to do 3 focus point heavy attacks while in Cloud Step, which is just a significant damage reduction from doing 4-point ones. Past that though, the other 2 main ones don't have any offensive effect, so it's personal choice, but if you do the secret ending of the game, the true ending, and then you do get another relic when you go into New Game Plus. Without spoiling much about it, one of the options you will get for that makes your A Pluck of Many spell duplicates copy charged heavy attacks when you do them, which of course synergizes insanely well with the setup if you want to take it into New Game Plus, unless you combine your 3rd spell slot in with our general burst for a massive hit too. Moving on then to the skills themselves, the ones that are required to function this properly are within the alteration tree in its Cloud Step itself. Cloud Step is obviously the main thing that we do. Pretty much all of these upgrades will make Cloud Step better in one way or another, and most of them synergize or are required to have in the first place to get the options that we really want. For example, the ability to charge a heavy attack for Unveiling Strike requires every upgrade before at least to 1 point, and Absolute Strike is just a considerable increase to damage of Unveiling Strike. I know it says that, but it means it. It's really good. Past that, you of course want to get Ring of Fire points as well. Specifically, you want 3 points into this one, you want this one, and then you want 2 points into Consolidation. These are the ones that are genuinely important and will really matter while you're doing this, but the other ones aren't bad either, so we of course do want to take them as we're using Ring of Fire anyways. The maximum stamina is great, but doesn't affect our main burst. The increased damage reduction is great, but again doesn't affect our main burst because we'll be in stealth, and the increased duration of Ring of Fire is good. It does increase the mana cost, but this lets you be a little bit more functional in between the cooldowns that you have anyways, because it's not like the cooldown of Ring of Fire starts when the spell ends, it starts when you use it. Then past that we have your staff stances, and the important ones really are the left side down pillar stance, which lets you actually affect your charged heavies more than anything, as this all affects the stuff you can do while you are on the pillar itself, including the ability to use our gourd when we're at 3 focus points and still charging to 4, which is a really important part of our combo too. As well, on top of this, you can get ones on the right side. It depends how much you want to use this stuff in the moments between your cooldowns. Personally, I just really like using light attacks and perfect dodges for my general main combat. As well, you may want the sprint while charging with smash dance, just because we have a lot of things that synchronize with heavy attacks, and sometimes doing a smash dance charge heavy isn't a bad idea, even if it's not what we're built around. Then past that, the main upgrades you want in this tree still are Quick Hand for a significant increase to the charging speed of all stances. You want all 4 upgrades of this. This of course makes it way easier to get this off during Cloud Step, and 2 ranks of secondary damage, which just boosts the damage of your heavy attacks when depending on the actual amount of health that the enemy has when you use it. Then we have our foundation stuff, and at this point you have everything that is really honestly required, but there are a few more things that I think are really just important and useful to have in general combat, regardless of what your build actually is, honestly. For example, in stamina, there's a lot of things that I have here that you will probably want. Things like reduced stamina cost of dodging, which is really good. Things like composure, which makes it so that you keep your place in the light attack combo even after dodging, so that you can still keep going for your high damage and high focus build-up attacks, even if you have to avoid attacks. As well, this goes into things like extra focus gain from perfect dodges, as well as Vengeful Mirage, which does damage when you do perfect dodges, which also in our setup does thunder damage and shock buildup, both of which we are boosting. As well, these 4 upgrades in the left side of the martial arts tree are really just generally good for any light attack combat you'll need to be doing, and you will be doing light attack combat between the cooldowns, especially when Ring of Fire goes down. Past that, I've just basically highlighted the stats that you want to focus on the actual survival tree. Things like attack, obviously really good, crit damage, great in this setup, crit chance, also great in this setup, and then basically equal between stamina maximum increase and also maximum mana increase. Maximum mana, of course, increases the amount of times that you can do our main combo before you run out of juice. Most bosses will die without having to put points into this really if you have your other mana upgrades, but as you get further into the game, obviously things have more health, and so it will take more casts of these things, and more mana is helpful for that. Maximum stamina lets you actually interact with pillar stance charged heavies within Ring of Fire a lot better in between your Cloud Step cooldowns, because obviously Ring of Fire lasts after you use Cloud Step, and you can still use this to charge heavies within, and the way that pillar stance works, you will only get knocked out of charging a heavy if you either run out of stamina or run out of health. There's no just flinching you out of it, and there's upgrades that make it so if you run out of stamina, it releases whatever charge level you're at, so the more stamina you have, the higher you can charge before this happens. Simple as that. That just about does it for how to actually set up this build then, so finally let's just talk about how to play it to be clear on it properly. Start fights almost always using your spirit skill to apply shock immediately, and you can use this on cooldown if you need to reapply shock too. Then use Ring of Fire, roll out of the Ring of Fire to the side, and use Cloud Step. We do this so that your decoy from Cloud Step isn't inside of Ring of Fire, which lets us safely sit within the ring as we charge our Pillar Stance Heavy all the way up to 4 points. Between the 3rd and 4th point of charging, you are able to drink your gourd while you're on the staff, and we want to do so to activate our damage bonuses from drinking. Then fire off the attack when you're sure that it won't miss. You can hold off on it a bit longer than you might expect than the initial charge goes. Usually if the enemy is overly mobile, you do want to wait a bit just to make sure, so you take your time and line it up to make sure the hit connects. Then while you wait for the cooldowns, either play super evasive and defensive if you aren't comfortable dodging, or if you want to be more aggressive, you can either play heavy attack charging within Ring of Fire if the enemy doesn't physically move you out of it too much, or just classic light attack combos with perfect dodges to build up focus, as if you build up to 4 focus points through normal light attack combos, then you can even skip the Ring of Fire part of our main damage combo and go right into Cloud Step, or you can just use it as a bonus 4 focus shot and charge up normally when your cooldowns are up anyways. Really, it depends on the boss and the situation, but no matter what, this is just a really powerful build once you can use it. That just about does it for today then, everyone. I hope you've all enjoyed this Pillar Stance Cloud Step Thunder setup. It's super fun, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it if you try it out too for yourself. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.